Do you talk to your clients about if they write something traumatic, what they may feel physically?
Oh yeah, I've had clients go down for the count for a couple weeks. Just pure exhaustion of just sort of reliving something or realizing, putting the patterns together. There's some dismay. There's some anger. You know, we feel so much in our bodies as creatives. And sometimes they're connecting to themselves in that way for the first time. And so some things are kicked off if they have like, you know, an autoimmune or something like that. I don't do like a medical intake form, but I will, you know, I kind of gauge it as we go. Like I don't want to scare them and then put on them someone else's experience. Like, oh, such and such wrote about such and she was out for the count. Like, because they might not be that person. They might muscle through. But I do watch for it.
Did that happen to you?
Yeah. I right after and it wasn't the writing yet. So this is another reason why I was delayed with the book. Right after I came to terms with the abuse, I got an autoimmune disorder called echolalia. And that's in like 1 in 200,000 people. And it's literally your voice.
Wow.
So it's just too like connected to discount it. But you asked the question about the high self-worth and the low self-worth, because I took care of myself, on all like this, but inside of me, I hadn't taken care of myself in so long that I just thought for like 9 months that I was having like GERD or like some kind of like regurgitation. I was having a lot of regurgitation. And then I was getting skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. And I remembered, and then I couldn't eat. And then I went to see my regular doctor, and I walked into her office, and the look on her face when she saw me, and she said, "Have you looked in the mirror at yourself?" And she dragged me over to the mirror, and I had like an abscess on my chin. I was gaunt. And she did all these labs, and my blood was attacking me. And they literally had to find a specialist with echolalia within 2 weeks, and I was in a massive surgery in 3 weeks.
And so it's an autoimmune disorder, and it was brought out
I think it was brought out. I think it was probably always suppressed. But I think when you just open up, sometimes you're going to get the good and sometimes you're going to get the ugly. And that was definitely an ugly situation.
So how long did that keep you debilitated for?
That was, the recovery from it was pretty quick. Once they do the surgery, you're better. Like you're better in 5 days. But just like getting my system back going, you know, when your body hasn't taken in any food really for a long time, everything has to re-wake up. So it was kind of symbolic. Everything started waking up. Plus you get into this, and a lot of women talk about this, like getting better is not getting skinny. So I had kind of fallen into this whole I'm skinny. And then when my body started course correcting back to what I should be, there was a lot of like, oh my God, like I'm getting fatter and I didn't sign up for this. And so there was a lot of looking at, you know, the pluses and minuses of my story. Like, when am I going to be Kim for real? And then that started to catch up, and that's about when I started to write the book.
What is a memoir?
A memoir is writing about their lives and something that they've experienced that they think is extraordinary. I mean, if you think about a classic one, The Glass Castle, which was about a woman who just had this horrendous childhood, and she's looking back at it from being, I think she was very successful in business. So you almost can't believe what she had been through to get to where she was. It's just a retelling of your life. And there's a new sort of hybrid that's kind of crept into the marketplace, and that's the self-help piece in the memoir. And that's I wouldn't say my book is as much memoir as it is self-help, because I'm not taking you to the past. I'm staying pretty much in a small, like a microcosm of adulthood. I'm not talking about my childhood at all.
So your your adult Kim thinking back, having this dream, sharing with the reader, waking up, and the realization.
And then looking back at sort of my adult life, why I behaved the way I behaved in my adult life. There's nothing we can do about any of it anyway. Going back to the childhood's not going to necessarily give me any answers, except for like the original self, right? Which you were when the day you were born. And then from there on, it started to get messed with anyway. So I didn't have a lot of memories of, I didn't want to write a tell-all about abuse. My situation was not violent, and it wasn't like particularly traumatic. It was almost like a continuing dream of events that would come up in my memory, and I would think, oh, that was odd that day we went down that dirt. Why did we go down that dirt road? But that was it. Like, my mind was not wanting me to know more than that. And so I made the decision that it would serve my reader better if I focused on what I feel the abuse had created for me as problems and what I was starting to become.
Had you read a lot of other memoirs? I know you mentioned the one
No.
before, but no, you hadn't.
No.
I think there's one called like They Call Me Dave or whatever. There's some really great things about people remembering.
Yeah, I hadn't read any. I didn't want to have anybody's else's, experience to affect my journey.
So you didn't want to sort of mimic the writing style? Or...
Yeah, and I tend to, with writers who are writing memoirs, I might give them a memoir to read, but I often will give them books on writing to read, or something that would not be like at all in their category necessarily, because I don't want to put that on them. Like, I don't want them to start judging their book against this other book.
What are some of those writing books that you give them?
Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg is like an amazing write. It's like probably the best book about writing memoir. Anything Anne Lamott writes is just read Anne Lamott. I mean, for her wit and her use of description and the way she just sort of moves a narrative along. The War of Art is another phenomenal book. I'm forgetting his name right now.
Stephen Pressfield.
Stephen Pressfield. That is an excellent book. There was a book called How to Read as a New York Times writer or author, and I'm not remembering her name, but it's literally like she broke down every book that's great to read by, if you want to learn about voice, if you want to learn about structure, if you want to learn about narrative, if you want to learn about flashback. And I remember at one point in time, I got the book and I read everything. And just reading. We don't read enough, and you become a better writer when you read.
Yeah, Anne Lamott's TED Talk is great too. She puts a lot of humor.
Yeah,
and
she's very funny.
Easy to relate to.
Yeah,
and yeah, enjoy listening to. Bay Area person as well.
Yep, she is. Yep.
Do you think it's important for anyone who wants to write a book to begin writing a memoir? Is that the first step to writing a book, or if someone wants to write a narrative that's...
You mean like fiction? Or I think anybody should write whatever they want to write. If you don't want to write a memoir, don't write a memoir, because it's definitely a very specific style of book. If you want to write a psychological thriller, learn how to write a psychological thriller. If you want to learn how to, write a, like Anne Lamott, like journal sort of witty repartee kind of book, write that. And there's, different classes you can take in those specific areas. For me, I can coach anybody because I'm not specifically a writing teacher, right? So I'm not going to come in and teach you how to be a better psychological thriller writer. I'm going to help you have a better writer voice for you, but I'm not necessarily an expert in the psychological thriller. I might be an expert on great characters or great plot. So sometimes people ask me that. They're like, well, there seems to be like a formula with certain books. And I'm like, wow, is there? I don't know. Because that's not my genre.